Jojo Part 2. I swear, man, that is like one of the best openings of all time. Like, it's legit a bop. Jojo Part 2, one of the most beloved parts in the entire franchise. And of course, the one and only young Joseph Joestar. Not the old Joseph. Young Joseph Joestar, which is probably, not even probably, is quite the refresher after Part 1's more, let's just say, serious protagonist.
That's what I'm talking about. This shit means something to me, man.
Well. There's a lot of things we can dive into with this JoJo part, but if there's definitely one thing I gotta say, it created some of the best memes and most epic moments out of the entire franchise. Basically, when Joseph practically pulled off everything that happens to America weekly.
Okay.
I still cannot get enough of that clip, but still, this goofy and lovable character started something for the JoJo franchise and made a new perspective onto JoJo. Because I'm sure, even like me, most fans went into Part 1, it was like, oh yeah, like, I mean, I was a person, obviously, if you watched my video, you would know that I think Part 1 is good. But still, whenever you came into Part 2, it created just this fresh landscape, this fresh plot, this amazing, like, funny scenes. Like, it was just so amazing, and I was kind of mind blown from like all the amazing stuff that JoJo had to offer right after Part 1. Because if anyone was like me, I was like, oh wow, is the series just gonna be this? And then you started getting innovated into a lot more things. And I think that is something that Araki did so well, is his innovation of every single part to actually come out in the series. Like, I think that it's just such a masterful job of what Araki does, because I know when I came to this series, obviously, Joseph was a lovable character from the start. I mean, he's funny, he's cool, he's pretty much a bad if you honestly think about it. Like, I think that he's pretty cool, but like, I mean, he's strong, and it's just cool going from Jonathan, a character who was still cool and still strong, not as funny, but Joseph just brings it to a 10 times better level than Jonathan in Part 1. Like, Joseph, what I'm telling you, when I got into the series, I was like, he is so funny. Like, this is actually amazing. Like, I was invested from episode 1 of Part 2 into now. Just seeing how cool, funny, and an actual lovable character like Joseph is. Because I'm sure 90% of JoJo fans actually love him. And of course, we get familiar faces. Sure, we do get new faces, but Erina is also in this part, which I feel like she is one of the most underrated characters and female characters to ever come into the series. Also, spoiler warning, even though I'm sure most of you have seen this, because if you're watching this, or you just quite don't care, she probably had probably one of the most easiest deaths in JoJo, thankfully. Now, obviously, we have the one and only Riz God, Fashion God, whatever you want to nickname him, even a fashion god, Mr. Caesar Zeppeli. Of course, if you watch part 1, you got Antonio Zeppeli, and then you got Mario Zeppeli, and then you get on to, in my opinion, the most underrated Zeppeli of Caesar, even though that opinion will probably get me flamed. But you get introduced to this character, and at first, it's kind of like, I don't really like this guy, because I was one of those people who was like a huge fan of Joseph already from the start. But as you get to adapt with Caesar, I think I can confidently say that he's probably one of my favorite characters to like ever be in JoJo. He's just so underrated and super cool and pretty advanced for the time of what was happening. But obviously, we all know what's next, and that is, of course, the training that these two guys have to go to, because for a while, well, yeah, for a little bit in the series, you obviously know Joseph and Caesar weren't friends automatically when coming into the series, but I always thought Caesar he's just always been dripping, man, I swear. Also, none of y'all can tell me that Caesar's Hamon was not like one of the coolest, if not the coolest. Like, I don't know why, but he has just one of the most unique Hamon in the different ways. Like, it just looks super cool just seeing like a whole bubble flying at somebody. Like, they made it look so cool and detailed in the anime, and I just honestly wanted to throw that out there. There is so many memorable moments in JoJo Part 2, and I think just the training aspect was probably one of the most memorable moments, and a lot of people have a lot of memories and a lot of just fun times remembering and watching and just going through the training process, just like when we first got to the pillar. Obviously, if you've seen JoJo Part 2, he has to get up to the pillar, and this is a part of the training because there's several different things that happen in this part. I mean, you have the bad guys trying to get the redstone of Asia. There's just a lot of stuff that happens in this part, and obviously they have to train heavy for it. I think the reason why JoJo Part 2 is also so good is just because of like how memorable it is, because this is easily, like I've said, one of my favorite parts out of JoJo, and I think that is what makes this part so good, is that it's memorable and that it sticks with several people. Like, even Moist Critical was talking about on Trash Taste with the pillar part, and that being one of the best parts. Like, you're making this guy still show off after he's fallen down it and takes like a long time to even want to start when Caesar has just been trying from the beginning. And speaking of memorable, we will never forget this.
Be who you are for your pride. Be who you are for your pride.
Alright, that's enough. But that would never still ever be let down from like one of the top 10 funniest JoJo moments of all time. But I think Part 2 had some of the most coolest fights, best fights, amazing fights. I mean, it was just so cool of different ways that they innovated the characters and just made Part 2 just the most enjoyable experience that it could be for the watcher who's actually trying to get into JoJo. Because after watching Part 1, be honest, we're all still trying to get into JoJo. But just like young Joseph Joestar's personality went in Part 3, I'm out.
Swoosh over their head, it went straight to their pockets instead. How you hate, you can follow the step. And and a ring on my wallet. These